Welcome back to Berry Life, bringing you easy and delicious vegan and vegetarian recipes from around the world. Ready to make your long weekend extra relaxing? Whether you're chilling by the pool or hosting a laid-back party or bringing something delicious to a potluck, we've got recipes to keep things light, fresh, and full of flavor. So get ready to whip up these easy weekend recipes with our step-by-step recipe videos. Because cooking delicious meals should be as fun as the weekend itself. Welcome to Berry Life. If you've ever been to Detroit, you may have heard of a local pizzeria chain called Buddy's. Buddy's has been in business since 1948 and is the home of the original, what is now referred to as Detroit-style pizza. This pizza is unlike any other. It has a thick, chewy crust with crisp edges and is made in a rectangular shape with square slices. If you've never had this pizza, then you're in for a treat. And by following this video, you'll see how easy it is. So let's get started. We're going to start by making the dough. This dough is similar to focaccia bread. For the dough, you'll need flour. You can use bread or all-purpose. We're using bread flour for the higher protein content, which makes a chewier crust. We'll also need some olive oil, some sugar to help activate the yeast, a teaspoon of salt, and some active dry yeast. If you have instant or rapid rise yeast, that works as well. And you also need some water. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button for more great content. We'll be uploading easy and delicious recipes every week. Also hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of future uploads. Before we get started on the dough, let's prepare the pan. For this recipe, we're going to use a 13x9 baking pan with square corners. Typically this pizza is made in a cast iron pan, but those are hard to come by. This is a non-stick pan. However, to get a crispy buttery crust, we're going to spray it with cooking spray, along with coating the inside with olive oil. When this oil heats up, it's going to create a crispy crust. You want to be sure to get every corner and all the edges. This will basically be like pan frying the entire pizza to GBD, golden brown and delicious. Setting the pan aside, now we'll go ahead and make the dough. Since we're using active dry yeast, we need to go ahead and activate the yeast, and we're going to do that directly in the mixing bowl by adding the yeast, sugar, and water, and then whisking it all together. The yeast will feed on the sugar and create carbon dioxide. After whisking it together, we're going to let it rise for about 10 minutes and then add the flour. If you're not using a stand mixer, you can do this in a cup. It's been about 10 minutes and the yeast has activated. We're going to go ahead and add the flour and begin mixing. If you're not using a stand mixer, you can mix by hand as well. Notice at this point, we won't add any salt. We want to properly hydrate the dough and also build the gluten network. Adding the salt now would hurt that effort. This mixing doesn't take long. We want the dough to pull away from the sides, and then we'll let it rest for about 10 minutes. The gluten has already begun to form as it sticks to the bottom and stretches. At this point, we're going to let the dough rest. This resting is called autolyse. This will hydrate the dough and help form more gluten. It's been about 10 minutes, and as you can see, the dough has expanded. Let's check for gluten development. You're looking for a nice stretchy dough that doesn't tear. This is perfect. Now we'll go ahead and add the salt and begin mixing. We'll mix for about 8 to 10 minutes until all the salt is incorporated and the dough separates from the sides. This is what we want to see. If you let the dough rest like we did for a minute during filming, it'll start sticking to the sides. It's nothing to worry about, as you'll see. This is a good sign. As you can see, the dough is well hydrated and incredibly stretchy. We're going to take this dough and form it into a ball. For this, we'll need to flour the surface and our hands. As you can see, this is a really sticky dough. If this happens to you, just use a little bit more bench flour. it's not going to impact the final product. Using your hands, just gently knead the dough into a round dough ball. We're going to use the stretch and tuck method, where we stretch on the sides with the palm of our hands and tuck them underneath with our fingers, while constantly rotating the ball. Then we'll just give it a couple of turns. Then we'll pinch the bottom to seal it. And that's it. The pizza dough is ready. If you see a trapped air bubble, don't save it. That's a good sign of gluten development. With the dough ready, we're going to place it in the pan, flatten it slightly, and coat it with olive oil so it doesn't dry and form a skin. Then we'll cover it with plastic wrap and let the dough rest for about 15 minutes. Right now the dough is kind of springy. We'll need to let it proof a little bit so it softens up so we can mold it into the pan. It's been 15 minutes and you can see the dough has risen and softened a little, so we can now mold it into the pan. To do this, we're going to coat our hands with olive oil and work the dough gently by pressing and pushing. We don't want to press too hard and impact any air bubbles that's formed. We do want to make sure the dough stretches to every corner and every edge. There shouldn't be any blank spaces. This will take a few minutes, but it's an important step to getting that perfect rectangular pizza. Working the dough like this is very therapeutic. With the dough stretched out from edge to edge and corner to corner, we're going to cover it with plastic wrap and let it proof for about 2 to 3 hours. While the dough is proofing, we're going to go ahead and make a homemade pizza sauce. This is a super simple recipe that only takes about 10 minutes. For the pizza sauce, we'll need 1 can of crushed tomatoes. San Marzanos would be preferred because of the sweetness. We'll also need some olive oil, minced garlic, 1 tablespoon of dried oregano. This may seem like a lot, but typically pizza sauce has more oregano. We'll also need 1 tablespoon of dried basil. If you have fresh basil, even better. We'll also need some chili flakes, along with salt. If you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to help support our channel, so we can keep bringing you more great content, and hit the bell icon for future notifications. We'll be uploading easy and delicious vegan and vegetarian recipes every week. In a saucepan over medium heat, add the olive oil, along with the garlic and chili peppers, and then saute the mixture for about a minute. You should start smelling the garlic at this point. Then go ahead and add the crushed tomatoes. Now we'll add the dried basil, oregano, and salt, trying not to get herbs all over your stove. We'll combine everything and let it come to a boil. When you start seeing bubbles, place a lid on top and cook it for about 10 to 15 minutes. Give it a stir every once in a while, just to make sure it's not burning on the bottom. It's been about 15 minutes, and the pizza sauce looks good. Let's check the flavor. It's still a little tangy for our taste, so we'll go ahead and add a little bit of sugar. That's the best part about making your own pizza sauce. You can adjust it to your own preference. That's it, the pizza sauce is done. It's been about 2 to 3 hours, and the pizza dough has tripled in volume. Let's go ahead and assemble the pizza. We have our sauce, cheese, and toppings prepped. Detroit style is a little bit backwards, as you'll see. That's right, instead of the sauce going first, the cheese will be the bottom layer. We're going to cover the pizza from edge to edge and corner to corner. In Detroit, they use something called brick cheese, which isn't commonly available. Instead, we're going to use Monterey Jack and a full-fat, low-moisture shredded mozzarella. Be sure to line the edges with a lot of cheese. When that cheese melts, it will get crispy and form something called frico. This leads to that signature burnt cheese crispy crust. It's all about that crunchy goodness. On top of the cheese, we'll lay on the sauce. At Buddy's, they put the sauce in stripes. We'll do the same here because it looks better this way. We'll make 3 lines as this is a large pizza. If you're nervous about drawing a straight line, you're not alone. At this point, my OCD kicks in, and I have to get the sauce in the corner. Now we can go ahead and pile on the toppings, starting with the onions. Then some green peppers. And lastly, the mushrooms. Now this is ready to go into the oven. We're going to preheat the oven to 500 degrees Fahrenheit or 260 degrees Celsius. With the oven at target temperature, the pizza can go in on the lowest rack, near the heat. And we're going to let it bake for about 15 minutes. It's been about 15 minutes, and the pizza looks great. The cheese is nice and bubbly on top, and that frico crust has formed on the sides. The pizza is piping hot, so we're going to let it cool for about 5 minutes before cutting. Look at all that frico madness. Before slicing, we're going to have to carefully get underneath the pizza and slide it out onto a cutting surface. Luckily, the crust is thick and crispy, so it holds together nicely. You can hear how crispy it is. We're going to slice it down the middle first, and then down both sides, creating 4 columns. And then across the middle, creating 8 slices. This way, there should be equal amount of sauce on every slice. Let's take a look at the cross section. This is what we want to see. A chewy, doughy crust with crispy edges. We really hope you try this recipe. It's easy and something fun to do with the family. Once you bite into that crispy crust, you'll be hooked. There you have it. Detroit-style pizza. Taste of Detroit right in the comfort of your own home. Man, that is insanely good. Enjoy it with a nice hoppy beer. On today's episode, we're making roasted tomatoes with burrata. This is a super easy recipe and it looks elegant. It'll definitely impress at your next party or get together. So let's get started. We'll start by preheating the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius. While the oven is heating, we'll prepare the tomatoes. We'll transfer the tomatoes to a baking dish. And then add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We'll save 1 tablespoon for later. Now we'll add the garlic, which we'll press. The finer the garlic, the more garlicky flavor you get from it. What do you call somebody who's been raised by garlic? Garlic bread. Next we'll add the salt and black pepper. And for a little bit of heat, red chili flakes. And finally, pine nuts. We'll only use half now and save the other half for when it's done baking. Now we'll go ahead and give everything a quick toss. We just want to make sure all the tomatoes are coated with oil. And we're off to the oven. With the oven at target temperature, the tomatoes can go in to bake for 30 minutes. While the tomatoes are baking, we'll go ahead and make crostini. For the crostini, we're going to cut 1/2 inch thick slices at a bias. When you cut it at a bias like this, not only does it look good, you get a longer slice. On a baking sheet, lined with tin foil, we'll go ahead and lay out all the pieces. Now we'll brush both sides with olive oil and season it with salt and pepper. and repeat on the other side. Now these can also go into the oven. We'll bake these for about 5 to 7 minutes per side, and check on them every couple of minutes so they don't burn. Everyone's ovens are a little different. While the tomatoes and the crostini are baking, we'll go ahead and remove the burrata cheese from its package and strain any excess liquid. We'll also chiffonade or finely slice the fresh basil. A good trick to this is to stack the leaves and then roll them for ease of handling. This looks good. Perfect little ribbons. It's been a few minutes. We'll check on the crostini. And they look to be done. Gotta love that GBD. It's been a total of 30 minutes. Let's check on the tomatoes. And the roasted tomatoes are done. I can already smell that amazing garlic. We're gonna allow the tomatoes to cool a little before serving. This dish can be served hot, but it's even better having cooled in the refrigerator. Once the tomatoes have cooled off, we'll go ahead and add the fresh basil and give it a stir. If you're worried about the excess liquid, don't. The burrata cheese will help with this. We'll go ahead and transfer the tomatoes to our favorite bowl. Just love the bright colors. And then top it with burrata cheese. More basil for freshness, and the remaining pine nuts for an additional crunch. We'll cut the burrata cheese open, cutting a wedge and then releasing the curd. The cream from the filling will mix with the juices of the tomato and allow it to thicken. Now we'll drizzle on a little bit more olive oil and sprinkle it with a little bit more salt and pepper. And not to forget the crostini. That's it, we're ready to dig in. We'll go ahead and grab a crostini and load it with these gorgeous tomatoes and the creamy burrata. It really doesn't get better than this. Let's talk chili. No, not the weather outside, even though it is cold. I'm talking about the stuff of country fair contests and cookouts. That stuff that the cowboys are always making over a campfire. I'm talking about beef chili. Vegan beef chili, that is. That's right, we're gonna make beef chili with plant-based protein. We're going to make a spicy, earthy, stick-to-your-ribs meaty chili with all vegan ingredients. So let's get started. For this recipe, we're actually going to make our own homemade chili powder. This has tons of flavor, and it's super easy to make. To make chili powder, we're going to need some dried chilies, along with some herbs and spices. We're going to use ancho chilies. These are poblano chilies, smoked and dried. We'll also use some dried Mexican chilies. These are spicier and will add a bit of color. Along with cumin powder. This is a classic chili powder ingredient. Paprika for more color and heat. Some coriander powder. Granulated garlic. Oregano for that earthier flavor. A little bit of thyme. And finely ground black pepper for even more spiciness. If you're making the chili on the same day, go ahead and add some corn tortilla chips. This will help thicken the chili. Traditionally, masa is used, but if you can't find masa, tortilla chips work just as well. Before we grind the chili powder, we're going to need to break the chilies apart into small pieces and toast them. Try to find the chilies that are still a little flexible. If they're too dry, then they've lost a lot of flavor. We want to get rid of as many seeds as possible, along with the stems. Removing the seeds helps during toasting. These seeds tend to burn, and that's not the flavor we want in the chili powder. As you can see, these chilies have a lot of seeds. In a large pot, we're using our Dutch oven here. Set the heat to low. Add the chilies. And toast the chilies until they're fragrant. This will take a few minutes. Keep stirring so the chilies don't burn. When the chilies are ready, the kitchen should smell like peppers. These look to be done. Let them cool for a few minutes before grinding. When toasted, you want the chilies to be crunchy. Add the chilies and the spices to the processor along with the corn chips and grind everything to a fine consistency. Since we're making the chili today, we'll also add the tortilla chips. If you're making the powder for storage, skip the tortilla chips. You can always grind the chips later directly into the chili. That looks great. The chili powder is done. Now we can move on to making the actual chili. This recipe is super simple with very few ingredients coming together in one pot. For this, we're going to need some onions and some garlic, along with oil and our homemade chili powder, can of pinto beans and a can of kidney beans, along with their canning liquid, which will help the chili thicken, along with a can of whole peeled tomatoes, which will puree. As mentioned, this is going to be a vegan beef chili, so replacing the beef, we're going to use plant-based Impossible protein. If you can't find this package, we have also tried making this with Impossible meatballs that we've cooked and crumbled, and salt to taste. Before we start cooking, let's go ahead and puree the tomatoes in a processor. If you already have pureed tomatoes, that's one less step. On the stove, heat up a large pot over medium heat. We love to use our Dutch oven for this recipe. Add some oil and let it heat up. Then add the Impossible plant-based protein. You'll be surprised to see how similar to beef this cooks. With a spoon, break the protein into crumbles and allow them to brown. We just don't want any large pieces. It doesn't take long to brown, only a few minutes. The protein doesn't come with a lot of salt, so we should add it now to give it some flavor. You'll notice some of the protein sticking to the bottom. That's called fond. It's a good thing. It'll add more flavor to the chili. Now add the onions and the garlic. And keep stirring like those cowboys. We want to let the onions and the garlic soften and allow the protein to absorb those flavors. We have even more fond forming at the bottom. More fond means more flavor. It's okay to be fond of the fond. With the onions and the garlic softened, We can add our freshly homemade chili powder. This seems like a lot of chili powder, but it's not. It's just a lot of flavor. Mix the powder into the protein and the onions, and you'll be rewarded with some beautiful color coming off of that chili powder. Keep stirring and allow the flavor of the chili powder to be infused in the oil. The fat is what carries the flavor. Now we can add the tomato puree and mix that in. Now we can add the pinto beans and the dark red kidney beans along with their canning liquid. That canning liquid will also help thicken the gravy, along with the tortilla chips. We'll also add 2 cups of water. This will help meld all the flavors together during cooking. Thoroughly mix everything and increase the heat to high and bring it to a boil. We'll cover it with a lid to bring it to boil even faster. It's been a few minutes. The chili should be boiling now. That's good. Give everything a nice stir and make sure nothing sticks to the bottom. Now we'll lower the heat to low and cook for about 30 minutes. Great thing about cast iron is it holds a lot of heat, and that heavy lid creates a pressure cooker effect. It's been about 30 minutes. Let's have a look. First thing you'll notice is the smell. It smells amazing, and it has reduced and thickened nicely. Now we'll add our secret ingredient. Chipotle chili peppers in adobo sauce. Chipotle chilies are smoked and dried jalapenos, and they come packed in a tangy, spicy adobo sauce. These take the chili to another level, with spiciness and smokiness and that little bit of tang. We'll give these a fine chop and toss them into the chili. Don't forget to add any of that leftover adobo sauce. It has lots of flavor. No need to waste it. So far, we haven't added a lot of salt. We wanted to wait for the chili to reduce. So now let's check for seasoning. This needs a little bit more salt. We'll give that a good mix. Now we'll close the lid and cook for another 15 minutes, allowing all the flavors to meld. After another 15 minutes, the chili should be done. This is perfect. We'll turn off the heat and allow the chili to cool before serving. If the chili looks a little thin, know that it will thicken even more as it cools. This chili looks and smells amazing. That thickness is what we're looking for, along with the flavors. We're going to ladle it into a large bowl that we have affectionately dubbed the chili bowl. And top it off with our favorite fixins. You have to refer to them as fixins and not toppings. It's the law of the chili. It's all very official. The cowboys would not approve. Today we'll add some red and green onions, along with some freshly shredded sharp cheddar cheese, with a heavy dollop of sour cream, and some cilantro for freshness. Let's dig in. It's pretty thick, really holds on to the spoon. Is your mouth watering yet? You can also serve this on a bed of spaghetti, as a certain famous restaurant does in Cincinnati. With a mountain of shredded cheese. There you have it, the impossible vegan chili. Today we're making a favorite snack of ours, vegan gochujang tofu jerky. It's a protein-packed, spicy and savory snack way better than alternatives. So let's get started. For this we'll need 1 block of tofu. First we'll remove the tofu from its packaging and drain any excess water. Then, using a tofu press here, we'll place the tofu into the middle basket and apply pressure to squeeze out the remaining liquid with the 2 rubber bands on the side and turn the clasps to tighten. We like this press because it's sturdy, super easy to clean, and stores well. We place a link in the video description below if you're interested in getting one. There are a lot of myths and misconceptions about tofu. On our blog at berryberrylife.com, we've shared a post busting some of these common myths. Check out the link in the video description below. Also, let us know in the comments what myths you've heard about tofu or vegan food in general. We'd love to hear from you. Let's set the record straight together. We'll press the tofu for 20 to 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes later. The tofu is pressed and relatively dry. We'll remove it from the basket and pat it dry. Why wasn't the vegan jerky invited to the barbecue? Because it couldn't meet expectations. Just want to say thank you for all your wonderful comments on YouTube, our website, Pinterest, Reddit, Instagram, and Facebook. It really helps us learn, grow, and adapt. Now we'll cut the tofu into 1/4 inch thick slices. You may need to go slow at this stage if the tofu is still tender or if your knife isn't as sharp. From this 1 block, we should get about 16 to 18 slices. If the slices aren't perfect, don't worry, because the uneven surface actually works in our favor to create a more interesting texture. Tofu jerky is a great snack to have around. It's healthy and savory. The best part about making it at home is you can make it the way you like it and experiment with different flavors. Also, it doesn't contain any preservatives. And let's not forget, this is budget friendly compared to store-bought. It's a great high protein grab and go option for school lunches, traveling, camping, picnic, hiking, or biking. We opt for these instead of rummaging through a box of crackers in a carb-craved feeding frenzy. Now we'll gently transfer all these slices to a lined baking sheet. We're using a silicone mat here, but you can also use parchment paper as well. Avoid aluminum foil for this recipe, as we'll be using vinegar in our glaze. With the tofu ready, let's make the glaze. For the gochujang glaze, we'll be using, you guessed it, gochujang. We love this brand. The ingredients are fresh, it's vegan, and it comes in varying levels of spice. This one is medium hot. Check out the link in the description below for this gochujang. Gochujang is a fermented pepper paste. It's one of those magical ingredients and condiments that enhances any spicy or savory dish. We've used it in noodles, pastas, fried rice, dumplings, stir fries, and more. We'll add 3 to 4 tablespoons to a mixing bowl, along with 2 tablespoons of light soy sauce for our savory element, 1 tablespoon of agave nectar for a little bit of sweetness to round out the flavor, 1 tablespoon of roasted sesame oil. It's kind of smoky, nutty, and ever so slightly bitter. 1 tablespoon of rice wine vinegar, or mirin. It's sour and slightly savory. And to kick it up a notch, 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. These are optional. We just like the way the seeds kind of stick to the tofu. Looks nice in the final product. Alright, we'll whisk it to combine. This recipe is more of a guide on how to make vegan jerky. I would encourage you to adjust the ingredients for this glaze to your preferences. You can play with the quantities to get your preferred combination of spicy, savory, sweet, sour, and bitter. Now for a taste test. Needs a little bit more sweetness. We'll add another tablespoon of agave nectar. And give it another mix. That's it. The gochujang glaze is ready. Now we'll head back to the tofu, and using a silicone brush, we'll channel the Great Bob Ross and apply the glaze. We don't need to apply a whole lot right now. Think of this as the first of 2 coats. We could also marinate the tofu or dunk the tofu directly into the glaze, which we've done before. But for the purposes of this video, we're using a brush. The advantage of brush is you don't need to move the tofu, so there is less risk of the tofu tearing or breaking. Also, you can keep your hands clean, as the glaze is pretty sticky. We make a similar jerky with other glazes as well, which we'll be sharing on the channel pretty soon. As I was brushing on the glaze, my wife told me, "Speed it up, Picasso." I was like, hey, what a nice compliment. Totally made my day. Now we'll flip the tofu over and apply the glaze to the other side. A small spatula like this comes in real handy. Just need something to get underneath the tofu slices, but not catch on the edge and tear. Again, a thin coating is sufficient at this point. If you're a fan of tofu or gochujang, be sure to check out our other recipes on the channel or on our blog at berryberrylife.com. We're always uploading recipes, so be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to get recipes delivered right to your inbox. With the glaze applied to both sides, we'll preheat the oven to 150 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 65 to 95 degrees Celsius for our viewers across the pond. And when the oven is preheated, we'll place our baking sheet into the oven and bake at this relatively low temperature for about 2 hours. Alright, it's been 2 hours. Let's check on the tofu. As you can see, the tofu slices have shrunk quite a bit. The silicone mat actually has measurement lines on the side, and you can see it's basically shrunk by half. The tofu is still kind of tender and flexible. So now we'll apply another coating of glaze, just a little bit more. This second coat is what's going to provide the flavor, since we're not going to dehydrate it as much. And it will provide just enough moisture to prevent the tofu from becoming too rigid or chewy. We want to control the moisture and aim for the sweet spot. The hardest part about making tofu jerky at home is not eating half of them along the way. And that does it. We're ready for the oven. Now, we'll place it back into the oven for 1 hour. At this point, you can even turn off the oven. The residual heat will be enough to further dehydrate the tofu. It's been 1 hour, and the tofu jerky is ready. We've let it cool for about 10 minutes after taking it out of the oven. It's become a bit firmer. However, it's still a little flexible, which helps give it that chewy texture. You can get a feel for the texture based on how it tears apart. Well, there you have it. Gochujang tofu jerky. A healthy snack that you can make in the comfort of your own kitchen. Today we are making a rich and creamy spinach and artichoke dip along with homemade crostini. Before we start cooking, let's prep the ingredients. We'll start by mincing the garlic. We'll dice the white cheddar cheese into small cubes. You can shred it as well. I thoroughly drained the artichoke hearts of the canning liquid. We don't need the liquid in the sauce. We're just going to roughly chop. Lastly, wash and roughly chop the spinach. Preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. On the stove, set the burner to medium-low. In a medium skillet, add the butter and let it melt completely. Once all the butter has melted, add the flour. Combine the butter and the flour to create the roux. The roux will help thicken the sauce. Keep stirring constantly until it reaches a light brown color. There should be a nutty fragrance. We don't want to overcook the roux. We just want to get rid of the taste of the flour. The roux appears to be ready. Now we can add the fresh garlic and the granulated garlic powder. We'll give that a stir and allow the butter to be infused with the garlic flavor. Now I'll add the cayenne pepper and stir it in. The cayenne pepper will give it just a little bit of heat. With the pepper combined, we can add the artichoke hearts. Combine the artichokes and the roux mixture and burn off any excess liquid. Now go ahead and add the heavy cream. Begin stirring and keep stirring until the mixture thickens. This should only take a couple of minutes. Looks like the sauce is starting to thicken. At this point, you should start noticing the garlicky smell. Now that this has reduced a little bit, we can add the sharp cheddar cheese. Combine until all the cheese has melted. The cheddar is beginning to melt. We're almost there. Alright, all the cheese is melted. Now we'll go ahead and add the cream cheese. We want the cream cheese at room temperature if possible. It just helps with the melting. Stir until the cream cheese is completely melted. At this point, you can lower the heat as the sauce is mostly ready. The sauce appears to be done. Let's check for consistency with the back of a spoon. This looks to be perfect. Finally, add the spinach and combine lightly. While not shown, at this point, we checked for salt and pepper and added them as needed. The spinach dip is ready. Let's transfer it to a baking dish. Layer the top with grated Parmesan cheese and pecorino romano. Now we're ready for baking. Cover the baking dish with tin foil and let's head to the oven. With the oven ready, place the baking dish on the center rack and bake for 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes. Let's check on the dip. Looks good. The baking is done. Now we're just going to set it to broil for about 4 to 5 minutes to brown the top. It's been about 4 to 5 minutes, and the top has browned just enough. The dip is done. Let's take it out of the oven. That looks amazing. Let the dip cool for about 15 to 20 minutes before serving. While we wait for the dip to cool, let's make some crostini. We'll make the crostinis from a French baguette. Just cut at a slight bias. On a baking sheet, lay out the bread pieces. Combine olive oil, granulated garlic, and Italian herbs, and oil both sides of the bread. Let's head to the oven. Set the oven to broil and toast for 2 to 3 minutes on each side. The crostini are done. Let's take these out of the oven. There you have it, spinach and artichoke dip with homemade crostini. If you're saying to yourself, man, that looks good, I would have to agree. Let's dig in. What do you call a panzanella that tells jokes? A panzanella. Today we're making a salad, where the prominent ingredient is bread. That's right, it's panzanella. Pan means bread, and zanella refers to a deep plate in which the salad is served. We'll start by preheating the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. For panzanella, you can use a hearty Italian bread, but today we're using a French country bread instead. In French, it's called pain de campagne. In Tuscany, they usually use stale bread that's dry and absorbs the dressing. However, we like to impart some flavor and texture to the bread, so we're going to cut the bread into cubes and make croutons. After the bread is cut, we'll load the pieces to a baking sheet and spread them out evenly. And drizzle it with ibu, extra virgin olive oil. The oil is to prevent the croutons from burning. You don't need a whole lot. Then add some salt and some black pepper. We always make fresh croutons with leftover bread. They're really handy to have around, especially for a salad like this. Then give it a toss. Then spread them out evenly. And place them in the oven at 400 degrees for about 12 to 15 minutes, or until they are lightly brown. After 12 to 15 minutes, we'll take them out of the oven and allow them to cool. These are perfect. They're crispy on the outside and a little soft in the center for a satisfying bite. While the croutons are cooling, we'll prepare the rest of the ingredients. Starting with the tomatoes, we like to quarter these, as it allows for more of the tomato flesh to be exposed and the juices can release to flavor the salad. Along with a sharp knife, a good bench scraper comes in really handy here. The juice of the tomatoes will actually help create the dressing for the salad. We'll add the diced tomatoes to a large mixing bowl. Next, we'll add some salt, some ground black pepper, then add about a quarter cup of extra virgin olive oil. Because this is a salad, you want to use the good stuff, along with a tablespoon or two of red wine vinegar. and a spoonful of sugar to round out the flavor. Then we'll mix the combine and set them aside for about 10 minutes. This will help the flavors meld and the salad dressing to form. Now we can chop rest of the ingredients, starting with an apple. We're using Honeycrisp apples for a couple of reasons. 1, they're in season, and 2, they have a crisp sweetness that offers a break from the otherwise savory dish. We also like to use peach when peaches are in season to make peach panzanella. What does the avocado say to the peach when it's angry? You are the pits! Next we'll dice some cucumbers, because what's cooler than a cucumber? It's nice and refreshing. These cocktail cucumbers are perfect for pickling. Since they're about 95% water, they're perfect to keep you hydrated. Then we'll chop a red onion. We like to use a red onion for its bright color, and because it's a bit spicier than the yellow onion. It adds the spicy element to the salad. Have you heard about the famous onion plunge? It's like the polar plunge, but with an onion. It's when you throw an onion in an ice bath to help it crisp up and to reduce some of its pungency. We like to use a radial cut, which is pole to pole. It creates thin slivers of the onions, leading to a better presentation. And to counteract the onion, we'll throw in some fresh mint. With the ingredients prepared, it's time to go back to the tomatoes and assemble the salad. We'll add all the fruits and veggies to the tomatoes. We want to mix the fruits and the veggies before we add the croutons. This helps to coat the fruits and vegetables with the salad dressing and prevents the croutons from getting too soggy. Wow, just look at all the colors. This is looking amazing already. With the salad mixed, we'll finally add the croutons. The reason we add the croutons towards the end is because we can allow the dressing to coat the other ingredients. We also prepared some additional dressing on the side, as we're never sure exactly how much dressing the bread will absorb, and we don't like to have a dry salad. With the salad prepared, we'll transfer it to a plate. Bread has been a Mediterranean staple for many thousands of years, and the salad is actually a way of using preserved bread. Now we'll top it with burrata, and drizzle the burrata with some more evu, along with salt and pepper. Originally, the Mediterraneans were using ancient Mediterranean vegetables, and started using tomatoes relatively recently in the 1600s. And we'll add a little bit more mint on top. And there you have it, burrata panzanella, a taste of Tuscany in the comfort of your own home. My mouth is already watering. Let's dig in. We'll slice the burrata. Oh man, just look at that. This is the kind of salad you want to take your time eating. The bread will actually change texture as you eat your way through it, so relax and take a moment to enjoy the experience. On today's episode, we're making a delicious and refreshing watermelon and feta salad. As the weather is warming up, it's the perfect salad to keep you cool. We'll start by cutting up a watermelon. We have a large seedless one, and we're only going to use half of it, which yields about 8 cups. It's fun to cut a watermelon. There's so many different ways. And of course, no matter how I cut a watermelon, my wife just happens to know a better way, that she's kept to herself until this exact moment. Isn't that how it usually goes? We're looking for about inch-sized cubes. Why did the watermelon and honeydew break up? Because they can't elope. There's something oddly satisfying about cutting these cubes of watermelon in a grid pattern. You know how they say you should stop to smell the roses? Well, you should also never miss a chance to appreciate the geometry of things. Next, we have a pound of feta cheese. We've patted it dry, and we'll cut these into half-inch cubes. This salad is one of our favorites for a picnic. We usually wait to assemble it just before serving, and make sure all the ingredients stay as cool as possible. Feta originated in Greece thousands of years ago and is considered one of the oldest cheeses according to cheesiology. A blend of goat and sheep's milk, it has a salty and tangy profile that complements the sweetness of the watermelon. We use it in many recipes, from spreads to sauces to salads, sandwiches, appetizers, and even desserts with sweet fruits. Anytime you need a creamy, briny tang to liven up a dish, give this cheese a try. Next, we'll add some fresh mint. We love using these ventilated containers to keep the herbs fresh. We'll snip the leaves at the stem and stack them up like this. Makes it really easy to chop. Then slice them into ribbons, or otherwise called chiffonade. Then add it to our salad bowl, along with the juice of 1 large lime. Love the way the mint leaves contrast against the watermelon and the feta. A feast for the eyes. And a pinch of salt. Next, our not-so-secret ingredient, a couple of tablespoons of za'atar seasoning. Za'atar has been around for thousands of years, originating in the Middle East. It's often used in Middle East and Mediterranean dishes. It's a combination of oregano, marjoram, sumac, with sesame seeds and other herbs. It works really well to round out the sweet and savory elements of the salad. If you can't find this seasoning, check out the video description below for the recipe. With that, using a silicone spatula, we'll mix the salad gently, being careful not to break the feta pieces even more. There you have it, a cool watermelon feta salad. A taste of the Mediterranean, right in the comfort of your own home. On today's episode, we're making French fries. That's right, in the air fryer. We've been using the air fryer for several years now, and it's our preferred method. It's healthier than deep frying, and it uses very little oil. So let's get started. Before we can air fry, we're going to need to peel the potatoes. You can leave the skin on, but we prefer to remove it. With the potatoes peeled, now we'll slice them lengthwise into the fry shape. We'll slice a side, then lay it flat and cut the rest. We're going for a standard or classic cut. Russet potatoes are great. They're dense, with high starch content, low moisture, so the fries really hold together. They don't fall apart. Once the fries are cut and their surface is exposed, we want to get them into the water as quickly as possible to prevent oxidization. The water will also help us remove excess starch. You want to use cold water. It shocks the exterior of the fries, which helps with the frying process. We'll soak for about 10 to 15 minutes. After that, we'll drain and rinse the fries and transfer them to a paper towel to dry. We want to remove as much water as possible, so lay the fries out like this and pat them dry as needed. The fries have absorbed water during soaking. That water will help the fries from browning too quickly, but we don't need anything more than that. Once all of our fries are dry, we'll transfer them to a mixing bowl. To the fries, we'll add our oil and give them a light toss. We want all sides to be coated with the oil. This will help the seasoning stick to the fries. With the fries oiled, we'll go ahead and mix our seasoning and add it to the bowl. We'll continue stirring and make sure all the fries are seasoned. That looks good. Now we're ready for the air fryer. Before placing the fries in the air fryer bucket, we'll spray the bucket with some cooking oil to prevent sticking. When placing the fries in the bucket, we want to arrange the fries to allow for as much surface to air exposure as possible. This helps the fries cook evenly without any uncooked spots. Our air fryer is a little bit smaller, so we're doing this in batches. With the fries loaded, the frying can begin. We'll set the air fryer to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and cook for 15 minutes. About halfway through, we'll remove the bucket and give the fries a shake. This does two things: cools the fries so they don't brown too much, and prevents fries from sticking to each other. If you're making these for storage, you can actually stop right here. Allow the fries to cool, transfer them to a Ziploc bag, and store them in the freezer. Alright, it's been 15 minutes and the fries should be done. Wow, would you look at that? Golden brown and delicious. Hear that crunch? It's like music to our ears. With the fries hot, no need to wait. We'll serve it right away. You can hear how crispy these are. There are people who prefer soggy, droopy fries, or so the legend goes. Now we'll go ahead and top it off with parsley and seasoning. There you have it, French fries in the air fryer. Crispy on the outside and cooked all the way through. Fresh, easy, and quick, without all the fuss of deep frying. Oh man, these are amazing. You have got to try these. Today we're going to make a super simple and easy recipe for a roasted tomatillo salsa. For this recipe, we're going to need some tomatillos. If you can't find tomatillos, go ahead and replace them with tomatoes. They should be fine. Tomatillos are a little bit tangier, but once you roast them, a lot of the sweetness comes out of the fruit. Tomatillos typically come in a husk like this. Go ahead and remove that husk and thoroughly wash the tomatillos. We're also going to need some onions, garlic. We're going to leave the garlic in the skin, so this way it prevents burning in the oven. We're also going to need some chipotle chilies. Chipotle chilies are basically jalapenos, smoked and dried. I usually get the ones in the can. They come with this great adobo sauce. There's a lot of flavor in there, so we don't want to lose that. I went ahead and washed the last tomatillo. I actually like to cut these in half and place them flush down on the cookie sheet. With the tomatillos cut, we're going to place these face down on the cookie sheet and take it to the oven. Alright, let's head to the oven. Set the oven to broil and place the baking sheet on the top rack near the heat. Watch this carefully. It should only take a few minutes and we don't want the fruit to burn. It's been a few minutes. Let's check on the vegetables. Halfway through, I rotated the tray for even charring. These look perfect. Let's take them out. Let the vegetables cool for a few minutes before adding them to the blender. These vegetables are beautifully charred. The juice at the bottom of the tray, you want to save that. We'll add that to the blender as well. It's been a few minutes and the vegetables have cooled off. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the garlic skin before we throw that into the blender. Into the blender, add the tomatillos, add the onions, and the garlic. Be sure to get all of the juice at the bottom of the pan. We're going to blend the vegetables only lightly. After a few seconds of blending, the salsa should be pulpy. Now add the chipotle chilies along with the adobo sauce. If you like it spicy, add 2 chilies. And blend until it reaches desired consistency. The salsa's ready. Let's transfer it to a bowl. This is way better than anything you could buy at a store. Let's check for seasoning. The adobo sauce has salt, so we haven't added any so far. So let's check. needs a little bit more salt. Let's give that a stir. Let's give that another taste. Alright, that's perfect. This is how we prefer the salsa. However, if you're using it as a condiment, feel free to add a little bit of water or sugar to help with the tanginess. Alright, let's dig in. There you have it. Traditional roasted tomatillo salsa. Welcome to the Berry Life. Today we're going to make our version of Levain's famous walnut and chocolate chip cookies. This is a vegan version using an egg replacer and vegan butter. For this recipe we're going to need walnuts, semi-sweet chocolates, vegan butter, brown sugar, white sugar, vanilla extract, baking soda, baking powder, salt, all-purpose flour, and energy egg replacer. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. To the stand mixer, add the vegan butter. Now to it, add the sugar. First the brown sugar. And then the white sugar. Looks like the mixture is coming together nicely. We'll stop the machine, scrape, add the egg replacer. Stop the mixture and add the vanilla extract. In a bowl, combine the dry ingredients and add them to the mixer. Stop and give it a scrape. Looks like everything is nicely incorporated. Alright, the dough is coming together really nicely. Now we're just going to add the walnuts and the chocolate chips and let the machine stir for just a couple of seconds. Once you're done with the mixture, just thoroughly incorporate by hand. Once the dough is thoroughly incorporated, using a large scoop, portion out individual cookies. Space the cookies about 3 inches apart. This recipe makes roughly 16 cookies. Once the oven reaches 350 degrees, the cookies can go in. Bake the cookies for about 12 to 15 minutes. In about 12 minutes, the cookies should look something like this. Let's take these out of the oven. Once the cookies are out of the oven, let them cool in the baking sheet for about 2 minutes before transferring them to a cooling rack. Let's check the bottom for browning. That's the perfect amount of browning. It's been a few minutes. We can transfer the cookies to the cooling rack. Oh, that is some decadent goodness right here.